Alright, my name is Chris Atkins. I'm a character artist on EverQuest 2. This is the construction video of Lord Yelinak, a boss NPC. Basically, I started with a previously used skeleton because it saves time on animation, and I go right into box modeling. I start usually simply with a box. So from here I'll just extrude from a cube and then just start pulling it along the bones, trying to line up segments with joints. And from there I'll extrude a lower jaw, separate the mouth, and then I'll just start going in and detailing. And from here I'll just keep extruding out and polishing the surface. Then I'll usually go up, start shaping, body, head, stub out, very rough shapes. I try to select poly groups that sort of resemble the shapes of muscles, and that usually helps you get a good base geometry for processes later on, such as ZBrush and Photoshop and a lot of other technical things with models. And I only do one half because it gets convoluted and you really start losing track of shape and silhouette when you try to work on both sides of a model at once. And here are the feet. It's a pretty simple process. I just try to grab each toe, just blast it out really quick, get a nice rough shape of geometry. The wings are sort of a fun process. You basically get to pull out extra arm and play with the proportions a lot more, and then you draw out the fingers. And then here I go onto the head, and then I started, plugging teeth in and tried to get the right shape and the correct look that the designers wanted, with the sort of ridged nose and furrowed brow. And then from there we picked out horn patterns, and for the horns the easiest way for me to handle it is to use a CV curve and then extrude the geometry along the curve, because it saves you a lot of time. For the actual wing membrane, I like to use the custom polygon tool. Alright, and then we get right into ZBrush. From the model, you come into ZBrush and you usually end up subdividing your few thousand poly mesh into 1.2 to 2 million polygons. And ZBrush allows you to just sort of paint in a more natural form. It brings you back to sculpting, and it's a lot more rewarding, and you feel a lot more like an artist than when you're just dragging little vertice points around. So here I just start going in and I get right into muscle detail. I try to use a brush that will sort of create that striated look and musculature, and I'll usually start with the neck and all of the shoulders because those are big muscle groups, and I like to get those shapes and forms out first. I usually go to the head last, or I'll jump around, but I like to get the body all set because the head's such an important feature that you want to spend the most amount of time on it at the end that you can. And from there I like to just put extra ridges in, make sure the horns are right. I try to pull up a lot of rings and depth around horns and things that come out of the skin so that they feel like they have that protrusion look. And other than that, this is easily the most rewarding part of modeling. You get to see it right away, and it's just a really great process for an artist. And right after ZBrush, we go directly into the UV editing part of this. UVs are basically the pelt version of your 3D model. You need to take all of those polygons and lay them out on a 2D sheet in order to paint on your actual 3D object. So I use this program called Velious, which you can see here. Really speeds up the process. Basically you can hold down one key, and where I used to have to manually unwrap every one of these points, throw a checkerboard texture on it, and try to guess and see how even my UVs were distributed, this program Velious allows you to quickly and easily visually see how much space your UVs have. Green is very good, blue is too much space, and red is not enough. So anywhere you have blue, you're going to get big time smearing, and wherever there's red, you're going to get a lot of pinching. So basically you're just trying to average everything the whole time. Now that the UVs are laid out, I go back into ZBrush and I'll start laying out the base color. It's a pretty simple process. You turn off inflation in ZBrush and you turn on RGB mode, and then you can just paint colors on as you need. As you can see, this dragon is sort of taking on an orange reddish hue. The interesting thing is I don't follow directions very well. It's supposed to be white. But in the end we ended up getting back to that. So here you'll see that I go into ZBrush, and now I'm back into the white version where I start painting in the proper colors, which are a lot of blues and lighter hues. From here I'll make a few brushes, and we'll start laying dirt and other grime layers to sort of break up the flat color, of wings and the body texture. I'll also usually make a few brushes for scales and other things that sort of help give it variation and bring a little life to it. And they're things that I photo sample because it's really hard to paint in some of those details, and when you're trying to save on time as well, it's a lot easier to photo sample things and sort of mix that with your general painterly style. And here we sort of get to start to see the final product. 6 days worth of work, and this is where it all starts to come together. You get to see the mesh applied with the actual shaders. You start to see some of the bump mapping and the lighting information and the normal map that drives all the scales. And then finally you get to see her in game. And that's pretty much the process. I'm Chris Atkins. I really enjoyed making this model. I hope you enjoyed watching it as well. I hope you get to enjoy slaying these creatures in the future, and I look forward to making more creatures for you.
Sony.